Welcome to the Connor's Corner segment of Ask the Lawyer. There are a lot of great actors who have played Wyatt Earp. Henry Fonda, Randolph Scott, Burt Lancaster, James Garner, Kevin Costner, Kurt Russell. But I think for a lot of us of my generation, there's really only one Wyatt Earp, and that's our next guest, Hugh O'Brian. How you doing today, sir?
Well, I feel like I did 35, 40 years ago.
Well, that's pretty good.
I'm soon to be 91, but I've got so many projects going and stuff, I feel like I'm 31, okay?
Okay, well, that's very good. Wyatt Earp, I mean, that's your seminal role or whatever. How did you get that part?
Well, I had the longest gun in the West. That's how I got it.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit for us?
No. I can't.
Okay.
One way or the other. I had a lot of experience with the guns because of being in the Marine Corps. And by the way, when I went into the Marine Corps in San Diego, when I enlisted, I was 17. Right out of boot camp, they made me a drill instructor. So I'm the youngest DI in the history of the Marine Corps. Very proud of that. I learned a great deal while I was in the Marine Corps. I took about 6 or 8 platoons through, and then one way or the other, the colonel called me in and he said, "We're going to be sending you to Bainbridge, Maryland, so you can take the test for the Naval Academy." And I said, "Wow, that sounds great." Anyway, they sent me to Bainbridge, and I studied there to prepare for the exam. And one way or the other, when we took the exam, I did very, very well in the different categories, except for, let's put it this way, I had a little problem hearing because of all the guns that shot off. And I missed algebra by 1/10 of a point, and they had me stay there to take the exam for the next year, and they put me at 8th and I, and spent a great deal of time at the Pentagon, involved with the Marine Corps in many, many different capacities, which I'm still very proud of that and of what the Marine Corps does and can do.
And how did you get involved in acting after the Marine Corps?
I never did.
You never did, huh?
And I got 35 films, a little over 300 television shows, and 7 shows on Broadway to prove that I'm not an actor.
Well, you got paid for it, right?
Yeah, and but I just never took that very seriously. Well, I guess it's opposite of that. I took it very serious. And because of that, I got an awful lot of different parts of roles, one after another. And what was fun about it, too, was the leading ladies were all very beautiful and very interesting. And I dated most of them and had a great time.
Okay, well, on a serious note, I understand from preparing this interview, you met one of the great personalities of the 20th century, Dr. Schweitzer. How did that come about?
There was a gentleman, well, he was with a company, Norman Cousins. He had Norman Cousins. Do you know that name?
Yes.
Anyway, he was a great individual, and he and I often talked, and he mentioned Schweitzer, and he was with the Saturday Review of Literature. And one of the things is that he asked me who my idols were, and I mentioned Schweitzer because I read a great deal about him. I guess about 2 weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks at most, I got an invitation from Albert Schweitzer to visit him at his clinic in Africa. Wow, that was something unbelievable. So I got on the plane, and it took me about 30 hours to get there, but I did get there. And it's just a fantastic 9 days. And during the day, by the way, he was his clinic was up from where the landing field was, about 8 or 9 miles up the Ogallala River. And so anybody that was visiting or going there for whatever reason, they had this, what they called a pirogue, which is a huge canoe cut from a log, and it had 6 paddlers, and in the back there were 2 empty seats. Anyway, I sat in one of them, and they started paddling upstream and had this unbelievable chant. So I picked up that message, and I chanted with them, and also picked up one of the paddles and used it to do my share of paddling. And when I got to Schweitzer and we talked about that, he, during the day, he didn't ask me if I would be interested in helping the guys in the pirogue. And I said, sure. As I said, there was a seat in the back, a couple of oars, and I got in to that unbelievable canoe in length and width, and picked up a paddle and started paddling with them. And I also learned their chant, and I taught them one of my own that I had learned in the Marine Corps, and it was just an unbelievable visit. And I never had less than about 3 hours with this man at night in his little hut or cabin, whatever you want to call it. And he was such a brilliant person and very easy to communicate with. And he just couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more informative. And when the time came for me to leave, he walked me down into the river. He stood between the river and me, and in front of the pirogue, he took both of his hands and put them on my shoulder. And he just squeezed my shoulders for about 2 minutes, whatever it was. And then he said, Hugh, what are you going to do with this? Of course, I had absolutely no answer, except I knew I was going to put that visit to work, and I said that. And he finally stepped aside, and he said, I appreciate your being here, and I do hope you'll pay me back by doing some good things. I said, sir, you got a promise. And we started paddling towards the town, Lamborghini, and got on the plane. It took me about different places to land. It took me about 30 hours to get home. I got home, and 1 week later, I had my first group of kids.
And what's the name of the organization?
Gene Autry Rides Again. No, that's not it. It was Hugh O'Brian Youth Leadership, which is Hobby, H-O-B-Y, and Hugh O'Brian Leadership is now, well, the program is in about 98.7% of every public and private high school in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and 10 other countries, including Iraq, that do put the program on in their countries. It was like that, by the way, if you want to look at it, and I would appreciate anybody listening to this, please do me the honor of looking at my website, I would appreciate it. www.hobie.org, and hobie.org is in lowercase, HOBY.org, and that'll tell you a great deal about where my heart is, and where I put my brain and my legs to get from one place to another.
You have an official site, Hugh O'Brian's official site, and I understand you have a copy of the front page of your autobiography, Hugh O'Brian or What's Left of Him.
Well, that's the title of my book, by the way. It's Hugh O'Brian, or What's Left of Him, and that is on. Well, you can look at it on HughO'Brian.me. Again, that's lowercase. Hugh and O'Brian are all together. HughO'Brian.me. And those that are listening, I'd appreciate it very much if you would do me the honor of looking at where I've been, what I've done, and put back, if you will, what was so important from Schweitzer and his words and his efforts. He was certainly one of the great givers of himself in the history of this country of ours. Well, the book, on the back of it, shows the 30-some films I did, and then, of course, the series, The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. By the way, The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp is back on TV now.
Right on the Western Channel.
Yeah, you haven't only seen it.
Yes, it's on, I think, out here on the East Coast. I think it's on about 1:30, 1 o'clock and 1:30 here on the East Coast.
It comes on about 2.5 hours back to back,
right.
1 to 2 p.m. And it's also on the Cozy Channel, the Encore Western show, which is on Cozy.
One last question, or one question anyway. What was your favorite film role? What was your favorite film?
Well, actually, there was two of them. It was The Shootist with John Wayne, which was a fantastic opportunity to be with that man every day. I learned a great deal from him in terms of how to handle oneself when you become famous, and to have humility as one of your main roles. And I did, and I won a great deal of respect for that. And the Africa, Texas Style was a film I did in Africa, and it was called Africa, Texas Style, or Cowboy in Africa. I think they've retained the title now of Cowboy in Africa. And that, as I said, when you think about the people that I had a chance to work with, Nancy Reagan, Schwarzkopf, Debbie Reynolds' dear friend. What a lovely lady she is, smart as a whip. And George Burns, great friendship there. And also Jimmy Stewart. And I first met Jimmy when I was his gardener. In the Marine Corps, I was come up and do, as I said before, do what was called, I had little cards made up that said exterior decorator. And I mowed lawns, did windows, parked cars, whatever way I could make a buck. and I was able to take a gal out to dinner that night. So that's one way of doing it, and that's the one way that made sense to me. And I'll never, ever forget the people that I met going along with that. As I said, like Jimmy Stewart, people like that, Glenn Ford, just a wonderful group of people that I was able to meet. And then when I got out in the Marine Corps and got into this crazy business, I just had an awful lot of friends.
Okay, so the name of the book is Hugh O'Brian, or What's Left of Him, by Hugh O'Brian with Virginia O'Brian. Now, who's Virginia?
That's my lovely wife, and she is not just a wife, she's my best pal, my best friend, and besides being beautiful to look at, she's also beautiful inside. One of the finest persons, one of the finest people I've ever known.
Our listeners have a lot of work to do. One, they've got to check out Hugh O'Brien's official site. They've got to check out Hobby, H-O-B-Y, and we got to check out Wyatt Earp on the Western Channel each day.
Yes, on the Western Channel, and it's up there as Wyatt Earp.
Thank you very much.
Where are you calling from?
Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Before. That was a great city, and well, it still is.
Yes, it is.
Right? I met a lot of wonderful people in that area, and I'm grateful for getting into the business because it gave me an opportunity to meet an unbelievable number of people, leaders in business, government, education, and the professions.
Well, I think a lot of people appreciated meeting you over the years. I'm sure they have. Thank you again, Mr. O'Brian, for being on Connor's Corner.